Picture this. You're face to face with a wild lioness, one of nature's deadliest creatures. But instead of attacking, she's looking at you with a desperate plea, holding her injured cub. What would you do? Ranger Alex, an 80-year-old veteran, was about to face the unimaginable when a lioness placed her trust in him and asked for help. What followed was a story of survival, loyalty, and an unexpected bond between man and beast. Stay tuned, because this story will leave you speechless. Ranger Alex was used to the wild. He had patrolled the African savannah for decades, dealing with lions, rhinos, elephants, some of the world's most feared animals. But nothing could have prepared him for the sight that greeted him one quiet afternoon. As Alex approached his cabin, he saw a lioness standing at the door. Not an ordinary sight, but certainly a familiar one. Lions were not uncommon, but something was different this time. The lioness wasn't growling, stalking, or acting with the aggression typical of wild predators. What Alex saw next shook him to the core. She was holding something, a small, limp lion cub. The little cub was injured, its tiny body weak, and its shoulder was soaked with blood. The lioness didn't act like a hunter. She didn't snarl or show any hostility. Instead, she gently placed the cub on the doorstep, then locked eyes with Alex. Her gaze was not threatening, it wasn't predatory, it was full of something far more primal, desperation. She wasn't looking at him like a ranger or a human. She was looking at him like someone in need of help, someone who had no other choice but to place her faith in him. Alex felt his heart race. Decades of training screamed at him to be careful, to step back, to never get too close. Wild animals could turn dangerous in a split second, but there was something in the lioness's eyes, a raw, unspoken plea that shattered all the rules Alex had ever followed. Without a second thought, Alex stepped forward, slowly, cautiously, bending down to examine the injured cub. As he reached for it, the lioness tensed, but she didn't attack. She just watched. Alex carefully wrapped the cub in his jacket and brought it inside his cabin, knowing that the mother was outside, watching his every move. Once inside, the reality of the situation hit Alex hard. The cub's injury was severe. He could tell it had been attacked, likely by a dominant male lion. The wound was deep, and the cub's body was cold from blood loss. If the cub didn't get help soon, it would die. Alex was no stranger to life or death situations. He had seen his share of injured animals in the wild, but this was different. This was a life that a mother had entrusted to him. Alex quickly assessed his surroundings. The small cabin wasn't equipped for emergency surgeries, but he had to do what he could. With limited supplies, Alex began to clean the wound. He was meticulous. This was the only chance the cub had. He injected a broad-spectrum antibiotic, careful not to hurt the already fragile creature. The stitches were rough, but he did his best to close the wound with what he had. The cub's breathing was shallow, its tiny chest rising and falling in fragile rhythm. Outside, the lioness was standing motionless, watching. Alex knew she was waiting to see if he was capable of saving her child. Every movement Alex made was a silent communication to the lioness, "I'm trying to help." There was no room for error. Time was running out, and the cub needed to survive the night. For hours, Alex stayed by the cub's side, occasionally looking out the window. The lioness had not moved an inch. Her intense gaze was a constant presence, a reminder of how high the stakes were. If the cub survived until dawn, they might have a chance. As dawn finally began to break, Alex exhaled slowly. The cub's breathing had steadied. He had made it through the first night. The next phase of the mission was simple yet terrifying. The cub had survived the night, but it still needed advanced medical treatment. Alex knew he had to take the cub to a nearby veterinary station for surgery, but this was where everything could fall apart. The lioness's trust in Alex was still fragile. She had entrusted him with her cub's life, but would she allow him to take the cub away? Alex carefully placed the now stabilized cub into a transport crate, making sure its injured shoulder was properly supported. He knew the lioness would be watching him closely, and he feared her reaction. Would she see this as a betrayal? Would she attack? As he opened the cabin door, the lioness was standing just outside, her eyes locked on Alex's every move. She didn't growl or bare her teeth. Instead, she followed him, maintaining a few meters of distance as Alex loaded the crate into his Jeep. The air was thick with tension as Alex started the Jeep and began to drive toward the veterinary station. The lioness followed silently, her watchful gaze never leaving the Jeep. It was almost as though she had accepted that her cub would be okay, but she wasn't ready to let it go yet. The drive was long, and the silence in the Jeep was broken only by the sounds of the engine. Despite everything Alex had seen and experienced in his life, this was one of the most intense moments he'd ever had in the wild. He wasn't just protecting the cub anymore. He was trying to keep the promise the lioness had made to him by trusting him. After hours of surgery, Alex's fears were confirmed. The cub had suffered a severely fractured shoulder. The team at the veterinary station worked quickly, stabilizing the cub and giving it the best chance for recovery. As the evening settled in, Alex felt a sense of relief that the cub was now in capable hands. But as Alex returned to the cabin the next day, his heart sank. The lioness was gone. He had hoped that she would be waiting, ready to reunite with her cub, but there was no sign of her. Had she lost faith in him? Did she believe he had failed? The cub was slowly recovering, but Alex couldn't shake the emptiness he felt from the lioness's absence. The hours stretched on, and the feeling of uncertainty hung over him. He placed the cub back on the doorstep, hoping that somehow the lioness would return. Days passed, and the cub began to show signs of strength, moving around more, eating and playing. But the lioness still didn't return. Then, weeks later, Alex's Jeep broke down while driving across the savannah. Trapped in the middle of nowhere, Alex knew he was vulnerable. Just as he realized his predicament, he saw movement in the tall grass. It was then that the air suddenly thickened with danger. A clan of hyenas appeared, surrounding his vehicle. The hyenas' eyes were hungry and calculating, and Alex knew they were closing in for the kill. As the hyenas grew bolder, a deep, thunderous roar shattered the stillness of the savannah. Alex turned, his heart nearly stopping. From a nearby clump of acacia trees, the lioness emerged, followed closely by a young male lion, a lion with a strong, developing mane. Alex's eyes widened in recognition. The lioness had returned, and this time she had brought her protector. Together, the lioness and the young lion charged the hyenas with a speed and power that sent them scattering. The hyenas, once confident in their numbers, were now in full retreat. The lioness had come back, not for revenge, but to repay a debt of trust. As the hyenas disappeared, Alex couldn't believe what he was witnessing. The lioness wasn't just saving her cub, she was protecting the ranger who had saved it. For the next 10 minutes, the lioness and her companion stood guard, never moving from their spot. They didn't approach.